Thanks, Riley. It's really good to be part of tonight's session and to meet you all. And I love sharing stories, and my passion in talking about my story, in particular, dim sim therapy, is to help to encourage others to take a fresh look at how they do life and how changing how they do life can make a real difference. I just love what Russell was sharing about, and I think we'll probably touch on a few of his concepts as well. And for a bit of context, I lived with chronic pain for 20 years, and it was quite debilitating. And if I shared all the stories that I have about those 20 years, we'd be here to well over midnight. So I'm just going to skim right over that with a couple of reflections. To cope with my pain that started in my lower back and eventually spread all over my body, I reduced movement, and out of fear, I lied down and kept still. My hope was that that would stop flare-ups and reduce the pain that I was feeling. I sought medical advice from lots of different clinicians and specialists, and what they did, they prescribed pills, and then they prescribed bigger pills, and then x-rays, and then CT scans and MRI scans, and I've had injections into my spine and all sorts of different treatments over that 20 years. What I did was I saw anything that had therapy in its name, like myotherapy, physiotherapy, osteotherapy, massage therapy. I've been there and tried the whole lot. And I had a standing joke with my massage therapist, and when I went and saw her, she'd ask me, "How are you today, Trevor?" And I'd say, "Well, my nose is all right today." And that just really gives a little bit of a snippet of what my mindset was, that I was in quite a lot of pain. And the other thing that I'd joke with her was I should design a T-shirt that said, "God can massage concrete." And, I had a mindset that was problem-centered. And I said to myself, look, if it's good enough for clinicians to come up with failed low back surgery syndrome, I'll come up with a couple of my own syndromes. And so I had TRMS, which really relates to therapy-resistant muscle syndrome, because, I'd have my massage and I'd feel all right for a couple of days, and then bang, I'd be back into severe pain. So that was my TRMS. And the other thing I had going for me in chronic plague proportions was PMS, and that stands for poor me syndrome. Everything was a problem to me. And over those 20 years, I was really left just lying down most of the day. I ended up being unemployed. I'd spent well over $100,000 on chasing treatments that left me in more pain, and no real answer as to what the root cause of my pain was. And as Russell mentioned, pain is complex. I ended up having lots of falls from opioid use, and I needed surgery for hemorrhoids, which was a side effect from the opiates. And my relationship broke down. My marriage was over after 30 years, and I was on my own. And for anyone that lives on their own, it's a vulnerable place. And what I was planning to do was to sell up and move into a retirement village with a nursing home attached. And that was my plan B after the medical treatments just failed me. And when I was at that point, sorry to say, Russell, but I took a sideways look at my situation. And I spoke to a friend who was in far more pain than myself. And he mentioned to me that he went to a pain clinic and that it helped him a lot. And the short story was that 4 months later, I got into that pain clinic, and they taught me about my oversensitive pain system. And over a 3-week live-in intensive program, we didn't only educate, we did. So I put into practice everything that I was being taught over that 3-week period. And I came off my opioid medication over that time with medical supervision. And 12 months later, I took my last pain pill. And 6 years later, I don't take any pain medication at all. So pain really, over that time, went from being a rock concert level volume in my body right down to how it is today, which is just a background noise, quite okay for me to handle. And look, that really is just a sneak look at my life prior. And I'd like to jump forward to today, which is 6 years later. I'm employed full time. I've remarried 3 years ago, and this room that we're in that you can't quite see is an indoor rainforest. And I built this room myself, and I lifted up the roof panels and got it all built. And really, that is such a big difference from my expectation that I'd end up in a nursing home or a retirement village. When I did the program, dim sim therapy hadn't been rolled out into practice. I found out about it 6 months after I left the program. And I heard David Butler talk about it at a Pain Revolution event. And it really grabbed my attention, got me thinking about what I can do. And it really has changed my life as I began to put into practice some very simple principles across all aspects of my life. And in the time that we have remaining, I really would like to talk about dim sim therapy and how to do it. Dim sim therapy stands for danger in me and safety in me. And pain is intensified when we're stressed. When we're worried, it goes up. When we're in danger, it goes up. And the opposite is true. Safety in me calms me down and calms down that oversensitive pain system. And it dials down pain levels that we experience. So what do we do with the dims in our life, the dangers in me? It is possible to reflect on what they are and just think about what they are. And in my case, I was able to change one of my dims, and the dim was move and you'll be in a whole lot of pain. So that kept me still, that kept me on edge, worrying about any movement. So I changed that into a sim by understanding that moving is good for me, that I'm safe to move. The other way of handling a dim is to ditch it altogether. We don't need to have dims. It's interesting, I just think about moving and you'll hurt yourself. What that did, it not only helped me to lie down, but my other behaviour was putting everything at bench level so I didn't have to bend. And then slowly over time, I started putting things under the bench. So I had to bend down or bend up and extend the range of my movement. So that was looking at safety in me. I got back into the shed. I slowly started to do woodworking and started to enjoy life a whole lot more. And that sort of moving across into sims, safety in me, starting to incorporate sims into my life is really important. I think that when we look at what are our dims, the danger in me is often related to other people's stress. If we find ourselves overloaded with worry and stress, it's very easy to ask ourselves, whose problem is this? And to have a think about how many of the problems that I'm worrying about in my life are related to my situation, how many of them are other people's. Describing that is, you just, ask myself, whose problem is this? And if it's not my problem, I can leave it alone and stop worrying about it. And a bit like me sitting here at the moment, and I'd forgotten to go to the toilet before, and I said to Rolly, hey, Rolly, I haven't got time. I've got to talk to these fine folk here. Why don't you just go off to the toilet for me? So it's really important to have a clear idea about whose problem are we talking about here and to handle them. And safety in me is really anything that gives me a calm, safe, fun, joyful time. What I did was I started to write down what are my sims, and I've got a very long list of what are my sims. And I'm sitting here in this beautiful rainforest and just coming out here at the end of the day and having a cup of coffee or tea with my wife and unwinding and relaxing is a big sim. Going to the pool, warm water exercise, walking, going to work, helping people, volunteering, There's lots of things that we can do that are Sims. I think family's a lovely big Sim too. I'm a granddad, and during COVID, we were separated from family. I just went over to Perth, which is about 4,000 kilometres west of here, and spent a couple of weeks with my family and my granddaughters. And the night that we arrived, my 5-year-old granddaughter said to me, "Granddad, can you stay forever?" And it was just a beautiful thing, just warms your heart really to hear those things. The practical application of DIMS and SIMS really works on calming down our oversensitive pain system in a very practical way, and stress blocks the production of our happy hormones and calm releases on them. I have a very, very funny story that I'm going to slip in here. And when I was touring Tasmania with Pain Revolution and talking to groups, we went down to Hobart, and David Butler was about to talk, and we were in an aged care centre. I was looking at this myself, really. This is where I might end up, and thankful that that wasn't the case. But there was about 60 older people in wheelchairs and like just sitting around. And David Butler was talking about DIM-SIM therapy and how our fun, enjoyable activities release happy hormones. He named all of the different happy juices that our thymus in our head can release. And then he said to everyone, "What do you think releases your hormones?" And there was a bit of a quiet. And then he threw his arms out and he said, "What about sex?" And all of a sudden, this group of older people were just sitting there, nodding their heads with big smiles on their faces. And Trevor, sitting in the corner, tried to keep a straight face, really, because, I hadn't been in a relationship for a while. And it got me thinking about possibilities, and here we are. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is, how do we incorporate SIMS? And not just for patients with a lived experience, they're for all of us. How can we incorporate SIMS into our life so that they become part of what we do, and how we treat our staff in the clinic, how we treat our patients in the clinic? What are the ideas that we can have to generate SIMS? And provide a practical example of that. Just leading up to my wedding 3 years ago, my right leg just decided to stop working. And I was in incredible pain, and I was really worried about it because I couldn't drive my car and couldn't use the brake pedal. So I rang a friend, and a few of you might know Lysanthia, and I rang her and she said, "Trevor, do you think you might be a bit stressed?" And I said, "Oh, duh, there's a lot of stress going on." So we dealt with that, and my leg got better quite quickly. And in the meantime, though, I'd gone off to a physio just to check out, was there any tissue damage here? And I walked in, and they welcomed me into the clinic, called me by my name, helped fill out the intake form. And a lady on the reception area offered me a cup of coffee, cup of tea. There was fruit on the top of the bench. I was made to feel like part of the family. And it was safety in me just coming out through every part of that clinic. And I'm sitting there filling out the intake form, and I look across to the reception desk, and underneath it was this big board with all the brochures from the local community groups, walking groups, chess playing groups, free lunches, card groups, all of those sorts of things. And when you think about pain, not only being issues with our tissues, but having a psychological and a social component to it, this clinic was modelling what SIMS are to their patients. And that was, fantastic. And then just a week after then, I had to get 2 fillings, one in each side of my teeth. And we're only 2 weeks away from the wedding. And the dentist said to me, "Well, we can do one side at a time with anaesthetic, and there'll be about a 6 weeks wait in between, or you can get them done now without anaesthetic." So I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, well, let's give this DIM-SIM theory a real red hot go. And I'll just say, right, let's do it. Here we are. Let's do it. No needle. So I'm sitting back in the dentist chair and I'm thinking to myself, this bloke knows what he's doing. He's all right. This is safe. I'm okay. And this is good for me. He starts to drill my teeth and I just feel a gentle rubbing. I mean, you think what Russell said about pain having a danger element to it. There was no danger in what was happening to me, and I didn't need to know that this was going to hurt because, yeah, my tooth was getting drilled. And I just felt this gentle rubbing, and then halfway through getting drilled, bang, my mouth exploded with this lightning bolt of pain. And it was just a flash, and I think it was just a joke on myself, my brain telling me that, yeah, we know something's going on here. Got it all finished, and that side of it really worked out well for me. Yeah, so look, we've got a couple of minutes left, and I just thought I'd tell you a bit about my mindset prior to going into the pain clinic, where everything was a problem, PMS. And this is my 2-year-old granddaughter, she's now 5, and here I am over in Perth after leaving the clinic and stretching the calves, and look at what happened. She threw her leg up and was stretching it too. And, you know, just beautiful to see her modelling, learning from Granddad. And people learn from what we do. So keep that in mind. Yeah, it's one of my favourite photos, actually. Now, I was going to do the assessment for the pain clinic. And in my PMS state, everything was a problem. I couldn't bend, I couldn't move. I was in so much pain. And I was failing all of the assessments in my mind. And then the person said to me, well, what I want you to do is I want you to throw your arms out and hold them up for as long as you can. And I just winked at him. I said, here we go. So 10 minutes later, I'm still holding my arms up, and he looked at his stopwatch and he said, well, I meant to keep you here till you drop. You're not breaking out in a sweat, so let's move on to the next thing. And you've broken all the records. And the reason why I could do that was that I play the flute. I've been playing it for 45 years and holding my arms up is normal. And that just told me, you know, it countered the poor me syndrome thinking and gave me a concrete example that, yeah, I can do things. If you use your body, then that's real good. So what I did as a result in going into the program is to say, well, I've tried everything the doctors have told me to do, and look at where it's got me. So despite all of this stuff about the program being rubbish in my mind, I'm going to give it a good red hot go, and we'll see where it takes us. And what I learned was that by applying some self-management to my situation, taking responsibility, getting support, calming down that oversensitive pain system, it really makes a big difference. And my encouragement to people living with pain, but also clinicians, is to take a really good look at dim sim therapy and enjoy life. Getting into the shed and doing all of those things I thought was going to cause me a whole lot of pain. What it gave me, though, was the experience of having a life with a whole lot less pain by having a life and not being isolated and not lying down still like I was. So just great to talk with you. I think I'll leave it there.